Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, ciao, bonjour, namaste, jumbo. Bienvenidos. Hey, my name is Jedley. Welcome to Reading with Your Kids. We are coming to you from the beautiful, wonderful, very, very cold today neighborhood of Reedville, located in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We're so very honored and so wicked happy that you're joining us in our mission to help all families grow closer through reading. We do that by sharing fun, thoughtful, and thought-provoking conversations with fascinating people who just happen to be writing books for kids of all ages. You can join us in that mission by telling all of your family and friends about the show and letting them know that they can hear us on the WREB AM/FM 24/7 radio network, and they can find us on the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Good Pods, Amazon Music, Podcast Addict, Audible, CastBox, Player FM, wherever you find your favorite shows. This is going to be one of your favorite episodes of Reading with Your Kids. Later in the show, we meet Chelsea Chong Kim. She introduces us to Carol the Carrot, Bowls for the Salad Bowl. But first up, Sarah Arthur is returning to the show to celebrate Once a Castle, brand new YA fantasy that is part of her Caracol series. Joining us once again from the beautiful state of Michigan, our guest is returning to Reading with Your Kids to celebrate her brand new YA fantasy. It's called Once a Castle. Please welcome back to the show, Sarah Arthur. Sarah, how are you?
Lovely, lovely to be with you again. Thanks for having me.
I'm so excited. Sarah and I were just chatting for about 20 minutes, and we had a great time, and it's too bad you guys weren't with us. It was a lot of fun. But I didn't ask Sarah to tell me about Once a Castle, so this would be a good time for you to do that.
Yeah, well, if folks remember, you interviewed me about Once a Queen, which came out last year. It was my debut young adult fantasy novel. I'd written lots of nonfiction prior to that, including lots of books for teenagers, primarily about the intersection of faith and great stories. So Walking with Frodo was my first one, about the Lord of the Rings and some of the spiritual themes in that. But Once a Queen, which we discussed at the time, was the book of my heart. I've been wanting to write fiction. I'd been thinking of that one for 20 years. And so if that was the book of my heart, I think this book, Once a Castle, which is the sequel to it, is like the book of my sweat and blood and like crank this thing out really fast. And surprisingly, it's just as like fulfilling and exciting to write a book quickly as it was agonizing. So, but it was also in part the book of my heart because my now 14-year-old and 11-year-old sons were a big part of hearing the chapters as I was drafting them, and we would read them aloud and they would give me feedback, and they were a big part of writing this. So it is still the book of my heart, just two hearts.
Now, I'm curious. We always hear about bands who, like you, worked on their first album for 20 years, and it was great and polished and refined, and it goes out there and it's a big hit, and now they have 6 months to write the next album. What was that like for you?
Not advisable. I wouldn't recommend it. I think I'm a lot like Tolkien. I've written quite a bit about Tolkien, and so I read a lot of his letters and a lot of his, including his letters to his son, Christopher. And he has a couple of things he says in there that I can really relate to. One is, I have many first chapters, which is, if you've ever read any of the extra material around the Lord of the Rings, you'd be like, how many creation narratives can there be? Many, turns out, many first chapters. That's me. And then also he says in one of his letters, it is a curse having an epic temperament in an age devoted to snappy bits. It's like, This is a man, this is before social media. Like, how did he know? Like, he, even with radio, commercials and his sense of the world moving faster and faster. Yeah, it was a lot. So,
So who are we going to meet in this book?
oh, well, I introduced some of the characters in the first book so that it was a setup to book 2. So in the first book, we have Eva, who is a 14-year-old first-person narrator, and her friend Frankie, a fellow teenager. And then Frankie has a bunch of siblings. And by the end of the book, we kind of see them more and their personalities develop. Well, in this book, Jack, the middle brother of the 5 Addison siblings, Frankie's, next youngest brother, takes center stage along with Matilda, or Tilly, who is the oldest girl in the Addison family. Frankie's, the next oldest sibling after Frankie. And also Elspeth, who is the second to youngest. She's like 12-ish. She and Tilly have been the only girls in the family and really close up till now. Now that Tilly has a crush on Lord Edward Hepworth's son, Charlie, or Charles, Elspeth's having a hard time with that. And so there's some sibling dynamics going on in this story. But I also introduced characters in the first book to the Rastegar family, the older couple from Iran that run the bookshop and now a tea shop in Upper Wolvern. And their grandson, Arash, takes a central role, as well as a character from Ternival, the fairy tale world, a teenager from there. So 5 points of view is also not advisable. Don't do that, like, ever. Thankfully, it's third person. It's like third person limited omniscient. So I'm not trying to master like 5 voices. I did with just one with Eva. So, but 5 perspectives. It's a lot.
It is a lot, and I'm always amazed. I just was at a book event, and I met an author, and I said, "Tell me about your book," and it was a fantasy, and he just went through this, and my head was going to explode, and I'm like, "Would you get like Post-it notes all over your house to keep everything straight?" Here? How do you do that?
Yeah, not everybody likes the same sort of writing software, but I love Scrivener because Scrivener keeps what it calls the like a binder in the left-hand side of the screen, and in that binder I can click on any of the things listed there. It's like a table of contents, and I can instantly switch to a new scene or a new chapter or a different scene or a different chapter. And I had to color code everything by like which character was happening at which time, and try to make sure I was giving an even amount of time to those voices. It was especially important to me because, with Arash in the mix, and also Zara, who is the kind of the female counterpart, who also has a Persianate background. It was really important that they got enough airtime, because as the story progresses, we see how these different storylines start to come together, that the Rastigars are not just immigrants to England, that they're actually pretty central to the whole narrative. That was really important to me. So making sure in Scrivener, I was like, okay, there's Zara. Good. All right. And Arash. Okay, great. Awesome. All right. Yeah, no, Elspeth, you've been talking too much, honey. Nope. We're going to tell this scene from somebody else's perspective. Move aside. Yeah.
Do you ever get, we've talked to authors, who tell us, oh, well, the character, I was really surprised what the character did and what the character said. And do you ever have a character say to you like, yo, put me in, coach? I've been
Yes. Oh, this book especially, it's a very crowded book. I don't know if you've gotten into it at all, but like there's a ton of people. I had to put a cast of characters at the beginning because half the time I couldn't keep it straight. like these poor readers, they'll be fine. It's all fine. And kids don't seem to mind. It's like the grown-ups who like, we just don't have a big enough filing system anymore we don't know where we file stuff in our brains. Kids can access that really quickly. But, there's a bunch of characters from Ternival that show up, who just literally walked into a room, and I was like, oh, who is this? You know, I had to like, hi, could you, if you don't mind introducing yourself to the author, that would be really helpful. I don't know who you are and why you're here or why you have such a great vocabulary. There's this groundhog, named Bark Whistler, and I've actually created a dictionary of his words and phrases as the study sheet for the poor proofreaders who are like, I don't understand this word. What is he saying? So yeah, he just showed up when Arash entered the tunnels on the way to the witch's castle. Somebody had to be the one telling them what was going on. And lo and behold, it was a large rodent.
Can you talk a little bit about, because I don't understand. I've had moments on stage where things just come to me, and I just go with it, and it's amazing. And my poor daughter, when she was in third grade, she was on stage with me, and we started this routine, had a volunteer up on stage, and we started a routine that had done dozens and dozens of times. And then suddenly divine inspiration came, and I just took a left, and my daughter's on stage going, Bobby, what are we doing? This isn't in the script. And I'm like, just trust me. I'm not sure where we're going, but it's going to be fun. And it was, but afterwards, and she's asking me what happened and where did that come from? I'm like, I don't know. Do you have any better idea of how that stuff happens? And
yeah, so funny enough, one of my dear friends, who's an incredible writer, Carrie Wallace, just published a book that came out yesterday about this very thing. It's called The Discipline of Inspiration, which is a very interesting idea that we are engaged in something that requires skill and discipline from us. But there's this magic pixie dust of inspiration that we often can't account for. And so she explores that theologically, about the way that God and the Holy Spirit show up, in work, even for and with people who have no religious or spiritual, would say they have no, sort of religious sort of framework for thinking about the universe, or, it's the old Greek idea of the muse, or, this has been this mysterious thing that artists have been trying to explain for a very long time. And she does just a really beautiful job with that. If you're able to pick up the Discipline of Inspiration, I would highly recommend it. I know Elizabeth Gilbert has talked about it a bit in her, in some of her work. She was the author of Eat, Pray, Love. Not necessarily a person of faith, but her TED Talk about this is really interesting too. Where she's like, I showed up. It's not my fault that the muse did not show up. I kept the appointment. I am here ready to write. But we can't just only write when we have those moments, right?
Right.
You couldn't just go on tour when all of a sudden you were inspired. So there's a discipline to the creative process and to being an artist. But, yes. And Madeline L'Engle has talked about this. Tolkien talked about this. He had gotten the hobbits in The Lord of the Rings as far as the Prancing Pony Inn at Bree. And Gandalf wasn't there, and Tolkien didn't know why. Gandalf was supposed to meet them there. Tolkien was like, I don't know why he's not here, guys. Sorry. And in the corner of the Prancing Pony is this character named Strider. And he didn't know who Strider was. And of course, we learn eventually Strider becomes the guy, right? Mm-hmm. In the last book. So yeah, it's a mystery that haunts most of us, I think.
But I love that you talk about the discipline, and, going out there and like we do when we go to the gym, putting the reps in, so that when it's, because if we're just sitting on the couch waiting for the muse to show up or from that divine inspiration, it ain't going to come. The doorbell's not going to ring.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's showing up. Madeline L'Engle talks about it in her book, Walking on Water, that we serve the work.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a way that the work comes through for us too. I mean, she'll sometimes there's this work that's wanting to be born and we didn't even come up with the idea. Like it doesn't feel like it was us.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where Carrie's book is so fabulous because, she really, really zeroes in on that experience of God in the creative process. And, yeah. Really.
We were talking a little bit before we hit record about AI and, and how travel books and technical work and how my show notes are done by AI, and it's a wonderful tool. But I don't think AI is going to be capable of getting that divine spark or that muse.
Well, AI is made in the image of us. It's not made in the image of God. So it may approximate it, but I do think that I want to say we'll know the difference.
Mm-hmm.
But 20 years from now, I can't be sure of that. In a way, I think we're at a really pivotal moment in history, especially as creatives. And I actually was talking with my sons about this. My 14 and 11-year-old, they're both incredibly creative storytellers. They love drawing. I mean, my youngest especially loves art and drawing, and he'll write songs and stories. And we'll do writing sprints together where he's on his little Chromebook and he's typing in Google Classroom one of his documents while I'm typing my books. And I told them, I said, you will tell your grandchildren and great-grandchildren that you remember life before AI.
Mm-hmm.
You will remember what it was like to come up with stuff without help, right? But at the same time, none of us really does create something out of nothing. Only God creates ex nihilo, as the Latin theologians would say, out of nothing. Only God does. We are all, very few of us are creative geniuses inventing stuff that's like absolutely new. Most of the time we are borrowing, like the room of our imagination is furnished by the stories we heard growing up, by experiences it's furnished. And sometimes it's just like, what are we doing with it? Right? What are we doing with the furniture, with the props and the costumes and the things that are there? And I think that's where AI will not feel like it has that spark, because it's been taught what to pick up or put down and what furniture it is. It doesn't have, it's not spontaneously like, a character's not going to walk in to a scene that hasn't already been there somewhere. That I think is going to be the difference. At the same time, like, any character I've ever invented is going to be an amalgam of things I've read and stuff I've heard. And so it's weird. We are out of, I do think, a very pivotal moment.
Yeah. As you speaking about moving the furniture around, I thought, I had a flash. A friend of mine, Phil Joel, who was a member of the Newsboys, a Christian recording band.
Yeah.
One of the things he likes to say in his shows is he quotes and I'm Catholic, so I can't quote Bible verses. But I just know the words. And he said, quoted the portion of the Bible where we are told that God delights in us. And I'm wondering, and I just had this vision of God being delighted when he sends one of those divine inspirations down and we act on it, and just kind of like we would with our kids, we give them something and they take it and they do something with it, and we sit back and we go, dude, exactly. And I'm thinking, whoa, wouldn't that be so cool if God's up there going, when I was on stage with my daughter when she was in third grade, if God back there going, yeah, great, awesome.
Well, and I'm so curious because I'm sure there are people have had some sort of inspiration that God would just be like, yeah, no, that's not me. Nope. But it's like wildly genius, like it's creative, but like what? And for some reason, this reminds me when I was in seminary and we were doing Old Testament class, the rabbinical tradition was that there's multiple facets of scripture, that it's like a diamond. You can keep turning it and the different faces of it reveal something different and reflect and refract the light in different ways. And so it's like the 70 faces of Torah. And one of the rabbis tells a story of a student. He turned in a paper to his professor and about a biblical text. And the professor's like, there are 70 of interpreting this text. And that is not one of them. So there are kind of some parameters and guidelines. But I'm not always, sometimes I think God is just he maybe hasn't sent us the inspiration, but is delighted by what he has given us the capacity to do. Like, oh, look, I left that door unlocked. And when you went through it, you found some things. How cool is that? It's not necessarily that he like left them all there, but like he's just as enchanted by what his children are doing as, like you said, as we would be watching our kid. And not that we've given them absolutely everything that they're coming up with. Mm-hmm. We've given them tools and we've given them, experiences and and we have steered them in, the parameters of what the good life is, and like how we do load the world they live in with value, like, and with the values that we find important. So yeah,
that's,
I just to explore there.
I just love the idea of God delighting in us and not being the puppet master, making us do all these different things, but actually just going, okay. And like, dude, I like that. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. And I see quite a lot of that in the way that Tolkien, I keep going back to him because, he was not he didn't express things like super clear, like the way Lewis would. One of my friends, also Jewish, said when she was teaching a Lewis and Tolkien class that Lewis could take an idea and make it really simple and easy to understand. And Tolkien could take a really simple idea and make it extremely complex. Like fairy tales and what they do for us and what they mean. And he turns it into this whole like theological exploration of us as secondary creators and God as the primary creator. And we can't create something out of nothing, but we participate in creation and creating things as an act of worship. Not everything we're making has to like impart some sort of message about the gospel or, it's not always, Tolkien got kind of annoyed with Lewis because he had such evangelistic impulses with his work. And for Tolkien, it was just, we do this because we were made to do this. Like, God delights in this. And we do this as an act of worship to give it right back to him and be like, look, Papa, look at what I made. Right. Yeah.
One of the reasons this podcast and it's not a religious podcast, but it was divinely inspired. And, I think I was doing a lot of performing in Catholic schools, and I had done a podcast that didn't really take off, and I fell asleep interviewing someone one day, and I said, well, I have to do something different here. And So I talked to some experts, and they said, you got to do a Catholic podcast. That's where it's going. That's what you have to do. And I was all set up. We had a name. We had everything, website set. And right before I hit the button, I said a prayer. And God said, nah, I don't want you to do that. And I immediately thought of how my relationship with my kids was built on a foundation of reading together and talking together. And I think the conversation that we're having right now, I'm imagining if a family is co-reading or listening to the audio version of Once a Castle, some really great conversations about not only about the book and the situations, but just about faith.
Yeah.
And questions that kids might have about faith. And I know a lot of parents get nervous when their kids ask questions about their faith. But I believe it's okay. I want our kids to question.
Absolutely. And I think it's absolutely okay as a parent to say, I'm not sure I have a really great way to answer that, or I don't know if I've given that the thought that it deserves. Let's figure out. Let's do this together.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see if we can find somebody who writes about it or has thought about it, and maybe we can listen to what they have to say, and we can explore this together. I don't know why as adults we're so afraid to say I don't know, or I don't know how to answer that, or I don't know the right. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I can't even come up with words right now. I think we're afraid of destabilizing their world, of making them feel less secure and safe, instead of leaning into the opportunity to model for them a holy curiosity,
Mm-hmm.
and the opportunity to model for them that we are lifelong learners ourselves. Like, we don't arrive at this moment where we got it all figured out.
Well, I have not. I've had many moments in my life, and I have not arrived at that one.
Yeah.
Figured it out.
Yeah. I mean, I have a master in theology. Like, you'd think I would have mastered theology, that I could actually answer my kids' questions. And on some level, like, I thrive on that because it's one of the few times in my day-to-day existence where I get to use my master's degree. Like, Mommy, how is it that God knows all of these things? So, like, well, let me tell you. But there's a limit. I mean, and to express our limitations and to express that we're in this together to learn, it's important for them to hear.
Yeah. And I have a feeling that sometimes the questions that are coming from kids to us that we can't answer are also divinely inspired to get us to start thinking.
I think that their curiosity is one of the primary ways that they have relationship with God.
Mm-hmm.
And the older we get and the more we lose that curiosity or filter the questions that we have and don't ask, I think we lose an aspect of that childlike relationship that it's not childish, that's like that Jesus himself elevates, as something to be like these. And curiosity is one of those. And the other way that I see kids modeling for us how to have a relationship with God is that they're just absolutely themselves, especially like younger than 12, right? If they have a question, they're just going to ask it. Like, they're not like, I coordinate the kids programming at our church, and it's all Bible storytelling. Like, we're literally not saying, and the first point I want you to get out of this parable, we read the story, the kids then retell it in some form, and we spend time wondering about it and noticing. What do you notice? What do you wonder? And then we follow their natural curiosity, and the stuff they ask and the stuff they come up with in the retellings is wonderful, because there's no wrong wondering. If that's what you wonder, that's what you wonder. Mm-hmm. And so I also, and the team of volunteers that we're all volunteering as storytellers, it's like we're modeling, like, yeah, I wonder that too. And we might not always have an answer. they're not necessarily, they're just noticing and wondering.
Mm-hmm.
And it's okay to wonder and not foreclose on what the story means or what they're supposed to get out of it or what the Holy Spirit's doing.
Yeah.
I hear it.
Yeah. So we're talking about being curious and wondering, and I'm imagining that there are some people who don't have a faith tradition, who don't have a relation, they don't have a relationship with God, even though I believe God has one with them. They might be sitting here going, well, this has been a very interesting chat between two people who believe, but there's no need for me to pick up Once a Castle for my kid because I don't have a faith tradition.
Oh, right. Yeah. Well, I mean, lucky you, person of no faith or who's spiritually wandering, because the book I don't talk openly about faith at all, really. It's an adventure story that has echoes of classic fairy tales and fantasy that give us a sense of another world breaking in on this one. And so, of course, for me as a person of faith, I have a lot of fun with that. But I think we all kind of have a curiosity about, like, well, what if there's stuff out there we can't see? That what if we could? What if we could visit other worlds? What if people from those worlds could visit us? And so for me, it's playing around with when you are, at least for my main characters, each of them has something about themselves that is a block to getting where they need to go or doing what they need to do. And the breakthrough is not always because they summoned some energy inside themselves, or they pulled themselves up by their bootstraps, or they that they are somehow stronger than they thought. For me, I do a lot of what Tolkien does, which is, actually, a lot of times we do need some sort of power or something from outside of ourselves that's going to intervene at the right moment. Mm-hmm. So, for example, Jack Addison, who is 15, he's a loner. He's the middle child. He wants everyone to just leave him alone. Like, he is C.S. Lewis at 15, who did not want to believe in God because God for him was a transcendental interferer. And Jack does not want interference. God's not even in the picture for him. For him, it's like, just get these. I don't want to be around all these people. So he's out. He likes to hike. He likes to look for geodes. But his pivotal moment in the story is when he is abysmally alone. This is the dark night of the soul for him. And it was really important for me to put a teenager in that place where they recognize that what they really, really need in that moment is for someone to please interfere. Mm-hmm. For the first time probably ever, Jack realizes that he cannot do this alone. And that's really important moment in my story. Mm-hmm. And for me, it's a profoundly theological moment, but I think for a lot of teens, our culture has messages about like how strong we are inside ourselves, and so then they don't know what to do in the moment when it all falls apart, and they are not enough. Mm-hmm. Because we all have those moments. We will all experience those moments, and it's crushing, and we think we're flunking, we're doing something wrong. And I thought it was important to have a character hit that moment, and for interference to happen, right? For there to be a response. Mm-hmm. And at first it seems like not great. But as the story progresses, you realize, oh no, he's actually being watched over. Like, he's being cared for, instead of hunted.
But I know there are lots of teens who experience that. It terrifies them.
Mm-hmm.
What a wonderful way for them to think about what will happen. If this happens to me, what can I do? But also for them to think, there's probably somebody out there, something out there that's going to get me through it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, and that we're put in community for a reason.
Right.
You're not on the planet alone. So how do we balance that desire for autonomy, that, Jack would not be swallowed whole by all these personalities around him, and they are big.
Mm-hmm.
They're big, and in some ways could easily obliterate him if he doesn't kind of assert his own independence. But he needs people.
Yeah.
We all do. So it's that balance and that dance. And then I have a character in the story who has selective mutism, or situational mutism, from trauma, and he has to he has to, at a certain moment, he has to speak at a critical moment. And so I think, and again, in that moment, the first words he says are not his own words. Like, he's reciting something. And it was really important for me to have that moment too, where we have taken in the gift of words from others that we can rely on when our own speech fails. So in some ways, like, a big theme in young adult literature, in addition to, like, you finding that strength inside yourself and that you're enough and all of that, another big theme is finding your voice and, like, asserting your voice. And I wanted to kind of flip that a little bit. And yes, it creates this release for him, and it unlocks his ability to, like, say stuff then. But it doesn't really start with his own words.
Mm-hmm. I love it. Do you have 6 months to write the next book in the series?
Oh, J.R.R. The deadline has come and gone, honey. We're so deep in the weeds right now. Yeah, wish me luck. Once a Crown is what it's called, and it comes out next year at about this time.
Okay.
Somehow this happened, and I would a big shout out to my husband and my editor and my agent and the whole team that makes a book possible. So
that's awesome. Well, you have an open invitation to come back and to continue this conversation.
Hey, yeah.
I love it. Where can people go to find out more about Once a Castle and find out more about Sarah Arthur?
Yes. So my publisher is an imprint of Penguin Random House. So you can go to Penguin Random House. Waterbrook Multnomah is the publisher. And they have done some fun stuff. These are called the Carrick Hall novels, the Carrick Hall series of novels. And so you could go to saraharthur.com, and that'll point you to all those places. And I'm on socials at Holy Dreaming.
Awesome. We've had a wonderful time speaking to the author of Once a Castle. It is the brand new YA fantasy from our guest, Sarah Arthur. Sarah, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you so much. It was lovely, as always.
Before we invite our guest into the studio, I would love to invite you to visit a very special website. It's clownswithoutborders.org. Clownswithoutborders.org. This is a group that I absolutely adore. I am part of Clowns Without Borders, and I had the honor of being part of the 2023 tour of El Salvador. I had so much fun joining with artists from all over the world to bring a smile to people who really needed it and really appreciated it too. And we would love for you to join us as a monthly Joy Maker. Joy Makers, they're a family of people just like you who love to laugh and make other people feel good. So please take a moment and visit clownswithoutborders.org and consider joining me as a joy maker. Join us right now from Orange County, California. Our guest is here today to celebrate her beautiful children's book. It's called Carol the Carrot, Bowls for the Salad Bowl. Please welcome to the show, Chelsea Chong Kim. Chelsea, how are you?
Hi, I'm doing really good. Thank you for having me.
Delighted to have you on. For those of you who can't see, Chelsea have set up a beautiful studio for us. Her book is on display, and her little plush carrot doll is right behind her shoulders. And it just and there's a bigger one on her lap too. It looks fantastic. Tell us all about Carol the Carrot, please.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. Yes, Carol the Carrot Bowls for the Salad Bowl. It's all about Carol the Carrot. She just found out in her school that she have a bowling team opening up. It's an elite bowling team that only elite tomatoes and broccoli could make it. And then all her classmates are saying, and never in the school's history, a carrot could join the team. And she's going to determine to show to her school that even a carrot or orange color could make it to the team.
Wow. An elite bowling league for vegetables. What a neat idea. Where did that come from?
Well, that's a great question. The inspiration behind Carol the Carrot Bowls for the Salad Bowl, it's a mix of my years as a teacher, my personal journey, and my love of veggies. Imagine spending over a decade in classroom filled with students as unique as the ingredients in a salad. Some were crunchy like croutons, others bold like radishes, and together they created something like vibrant and beautiful. That's where the salad bowl metaphor came to life. Unlike a melting pot, you guys heard of the theory of melting pot, where everything blends together like a salad bowl celebrates individuality. That's where my idea came from. Each ingredient I came up with keeping its own flavor while contributing to something bigger. So growing up, I was like a kid always starting clubs and getting people together, whether it was a study group or a fun project. Leadership was about the spotlight for me. It was about teamwork and making everyone feel included. That's the spirit of the heart of Carol's story. She was ambitious and determined, but she learned that real leadership is about listening, valuing others, and lifting everyone up. The characters in the book are inspired by amazing people in my life, my students who taught me about resilience, individuality, my colleagues who showed me the power of collaboration, and even little pieces of myself. Each veggies has its own personality, just like the kids I've taught, and they come together to show that all better when we're together embraces our differences. And that's where all the stories came from my students, teachers, colleagues, even for myself as a child, growing up as an adult, all come together as a mixed salad bowl.
I love that analogy. You're right. I did grow up hearing that America was certainly this melting pot where all these different flavors, all these different cultures came together to create this one big American culture. And on some levels that happens, but more and more, I love the idea of the salad bowl, that we all have something unique and we're bringing it together and we don't lose any of us by contributing to the greater whole.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Neat stuff. So, you were sharing with me that you left the classroom not too long ago because of kind of a divine inspiration.
Yes, that just came from last year of June. I decided to leave the classroom, not just for any reason. I just felt like a passion in me where I felt like I need to do something different. I wanted to change the world where not only in the classroom, where I had a passion where I feel like I can change everybody, not just kids, but young adults out there, where somebody like humble and generous people like us, I was also taking a lot of advantage of, where like a lot of people want to take my pencils and like my money, and like, people are like generous people like me, like humble people, like, like those people in the corner were like, hey, can I borrow your pencil? Like, yeah, sure. I'm like always a yes person. Yeah, sure. Yeah, you can borrow my pencil. Here's my money. Just take it. Like, I want people to be, I wanted people to be happy in their lives. And I seen those many people in my classroom, my students, always taking advantage of. And I'm like, you know what? I should make a difference. And I had an ASB program where I created in my classroom. As a math teacher, I also did an ASB program where I coordinated, where a lot of leaders I created, where I told them like, hey, if you see those type of kids who are being taken advantage of, I want you guys to be a big sister and brother to really take care of them and protect them. And I'm like, I should do this outside of the classroom. So then I kind of quit my job and I wanted to create a program outside the classroom, but I didn't know how. I don't know where I start. So then I kind of researched on the computer and then nothing come up. And then I read the Bible because I'm a Christian myself. I was keep reading the Bible and I was praying to God. And I was researching the computer, and then an ad popped up and saying like, do you want to be a children's book author? And I was like, yeah, I always had a passion ever since I was young, but I felt like I always had to have more wisdom, more wrinkles in my face just to write a book. You know what I mean? Like, I felt like I need to have more years in my life just to write a book. I felt like I was too young. I felt like I had not enough knowledge in my life to write a single book. But, there's some moment in your life or timing, I feel like you just need to do it. So I just took advantage. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to do it. So I took that time, wrote a children's book. It took me a year. I didn't want to hurry this time because I felt like I want to take my time writing the book, hire an illustrator, got my publishing company, make sure I invested in this one book and make sure everything happened for a reason. And here I am, a children's book author, an award-winning children's book author, went to many media appearances just to go out there and have all those kids around the world. And now I'm a podcast host, interviewing a lot of authors around there too. And yeah, here I'm growing my passion. And then, I have a lot of testimony if I can share later of how I inspire so many kids and parents to really speak up for themselves, that, they have the same story as me, growing as a diverse, minority background, and somebody like me who are like humble and generous, and they were taking advantage of like myself and like all those stories I heard. Like, yeah, I'm right here. And that's how my story started.
Really, really wonderful. So tell us some of that testimony you wanted to share.
Yes, one story, I was in a book fair and a father came up to me. Amazingly, he was the one who wrote my Amazon review. If you guys want to check that out on my Amazon review, he was one father who kindly came up to me and he was like, I didn't mean to scare you, but I'm one of your Amazon reviewer. Just to say thank you so much for writing your book, because of you, I had a real conversation with my son. And I'm like, oh, by the way, what's your name? And his name, I don't want to give the name out there, but he said, oh, I'm in so-and-so name. And I'm like, oh, you're the father. I really want to talk to you. And I'm like, yes, you gave me a real relationship with my son, because all these years I was figuring out how to have a real relationship. Giving you a little background of the father and son relationship, they didn't have any conversation. They were at a dinner table. They didn't talk at all. Like, no nada. Like, literally, they just eat and they just went straight to their room. Cause literally, father and son, I guess, relationships are typically, they're like more like, man. They just go eat and that's it, I guess, in that typical family. And he didn't have real conversation, but I guess he decided to buy this book because I guess his son was in the bowling team. And he's like, oh, maybe I should buy this book just for my son. And I guess he read this book first before his son did. And he's like, oh, son, I read this book and I feel like we should both read. And they both read. And then the son was like, oh, Dad, I actually like this book. And they had a conversation. He's like, Dad, I actually have a friend like a tomato. I said, oh, great. Let's talk about the tomato part. And then they really had conversation during the dinner time. And he was telling me all this story. He's like, man, thank you so much for making this book. Yes, it's very simple, very funny. And you create these characters like fruits and vegetables. Yes, it was like, I thought it was a healthy side of the book, but it was more than that. It was more like, I didn't know my son was getting bullied in school. I didn't know my son was getting taken advantage at school. Thank you so much. Like, I had conversation. Now we talk every day, every single time we have dinner table, and that me and him, we hug, we cry. Those type of testimony came like 5 times every time I go to events. I'm like, oh my God, thank you so much for sharing that story with me. And these kind of testimony came like at least 1 time every time I go to the events. Someone just comes up to me like miraculously, like, oh, I bet you don't know me, but I'm just like, I want to thank you for making this book for me and all this type of testimony.
Wow. That must feel incredible when you heard that story about the dad and his son.
Yeah, it's very incredible. It's like, I don't know how to express it to you through the audio, but I really want to like, wow, I should have took a video of it, but it was just happened all of a sudden. Like, I couldn't express it.
Right. And I'm guessing that's kind of what you had hoped for when you said that prayer and you were led to the to becoming a children's author.
Yes, exactly. I think that was the moment where I was led to outside of the classroom.
So I'm guessing that there is a work in progress. Is there a follow-up to Carol the Carrot?
Yes, there is. There's my second book. I'm actually working on it right now. My illustration part, I'm actually working on it with my illustrator, Michelle Simpson. It's the second part of Carol the Carrot series. It's going to be more about career, courage, and hope. So I hope you guys will anticipate on that. It's going to be really fun. It's going to be the second series of that. I think it's going to be called Carol the Carrot Dreams for the Future, I believe. That's going to be the title.
Okay. All right. That's exciting.
Yes.
Yeah. And what's the reaction when you return to a classroom, not as a classroom teacher, but as an author? What's that been like for you?
Oh my goodness. It's a different experience. Like, I think it's a different reaction. I haven't went to my old school yet to see their reaction, but going and stepping into a school that a title has been changed, not Mrs. Kim, like, oh, author Chelsea Kim. It's like a whole new level, a whole new experience. But deep in my heart, I'm still an educator. I think it's a whole new experience I can't express. It's just a whole new meaning. I don't know how to express it. It's just a whole new experience. But I'm honored.
Yeah, well, that's really exciting. We should tell everybody where they can go to find out more about Carol the Carrot Bowls for the Salad Bowl.
Yes, the main channel you guys can look up on me is Chelsea Story _Nook. It's my Instagram, Instagram social media. You guys can check out there. You guys can go on my link tree on the link bio where you guys can go on my author visit where I have all tailored lesson plans there. You guys can book me there for author visit. I tailor for homeschool, private events and schooling there. So you can guys check it out there. You guys could go on my YouTube channel, Chelsea Story No Podcast, where you can guys go subscribe there and listen to my interviews where I interview all authors around the world and entrepreneurs where I give sneak peeks and also good advice and tips from the entrepreneurs and CEO themselves. And this year I'm planning to do vlogs and also other exciting events and also courses. And I'm going to be making and inventing courses as well for that.
Wonderful. And in addition to buying the book, are kids able to buy that Carol the Carrot plushie?
Oh, yes. You guys can order the plushie now on Instagram. So if you guys want to, this is actually customized. So it's going to be limited edition. If you guys DM me yourself, you guys will just need to say, oh, I want a plushie. And that's all. It's very simple, guys. The plushie itself is very customized. So just DM me on my Instagram. You guys can get the plushie. All the merches itself, you guys can go Shopify and my link tree in Instagram. You guys can go shop there and it will deliver right at your home.
We've had a great time speaking to the author of Carol the Carrot Bowls for the Salad Bowl. Our guest has been Chelsea Chong Kim. Chelsea, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Reading with Your Kids and will join us for the next exciting episode of the show. In the meantime, please connect with us on social media, facebook.com/readingwithyourkids, at Reading With Your Kids on Instagram, and at Jedley Magic on X. We have a great YouTube channel, youtube.com/readingwithyourkids, and we think we have a pretty special website. It's readingwithyourkids.com. Time now for me to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Of course, we'll start by thanking our guest, Sarah Arthur. Please be sure to check out Once a Castle, and Chelsea Chong Kim. Please be sure to check out Carol the Carrot Bowls for the Salad Bowl. I also want to thank my team, Fatima Khan, Chris Doherty, Rory Grady. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place. And you do that every time you read with your kids. I'll be looking for the next episode of Reading with Your Kids.